Convicted hacker Jeremy Hammond, who faced up to 10 years in prison, was given the maximum sentence by the judge for hacking private intelligence firm Strategic Forecasting, or Stratfor. Now, the security breach resulted in the theft of employee emails and account information for approximately 860,000 Stratfor subscribers and clients, and that included the credit card information of over 60,000 people. Now, $700,000 in fraudulent charges were also made on those cards in the form of donations to nonprofits, which the government has alleged that Hammond encouraged members of Anonymous, the loose-knit hacking collective, to carry out. Now, the government charges originally added up to 30 years in prison, but Hammond chose a plea deal in May for one conspiracy charge for violating the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, an outdated federal anti-hacking law that's also being used to prosecute internet freedom activist Aaron Swartz. Tell us what the mood was like, what was going on.
Well, I mean, it was a pretty serious mood, like very serious things going on. There was a lot of good oration. I found that, particularly with the judge's mood, it turned once Jeremy read his statement. She wasn't, she took a very dim view, I think, of the crimes and didn't want to hear that there was a larger reason behind this. That if I could read her face, that's what it said.
And in what particular part of the statement did the judge start to turn? You know, was there something in particular that pissed her off?
The one thing that seemed to, there were a number of things in there that she seemed to just facially at least take objection with, but one thing in particular was there was an issue of protective orders in terms of victims, and I don't believe that a list of countries were the victims. I could be wrong, but Jeremy started reading off a list of countries that were given to him by the FBI as targets, like exploits to hack. The central problem with what was going on in that courtroom was that, from my perspective, the judge wasn't willing to give an inch on the idea that this is an evolution of history in terms of protests, in terms of tactics, in terms of where we are as a society being spied on with, you know, information. Is it going to be free? What are we going to let our government do? She didn't want to hear any of that. It seemed she didn't want to take into account the beautiful and eloquent arguments of counsel and the statement of Jeremy himself that put this in a historical context and explained where this was on a continuum and why warehousing Jeremy Hammond for 10 years, which is what they're doing, makes no sense at all.
You, as well as more than 250 other people, actually wrote letters of support you know, for Jeremy. There was a petition online on change.org that garnered over 4,000 signatures for people asking for leniency in his sentencing. And in fact, your letter was read, or at least parts of it, today at the sentencing hearing. What was it that you wrote?
Well, part of the point I made was that he was engaged in an act of civil disobedience. And what, in effect, he was doing was exposing wrongdoing that was happening. And I think that's important. And I think the judge should have taken that into account. And some of the stuff that the judge didn't let him go into, I think, is actually important, too, because I do believe that what Jeremy was trying to get at was that someone was directing him to hack these different countries. And I think it's important to point out that what he did, it was done under the supervision of the FBI in a certain sense, because he was directed in part by Sabu, who was at that point a government informant or working for the FBI. When he downloaded the contents of the Stratfor hack, it was down on a server that was owned by the FBI. So you might think that he had a really good case that he was entrapped in this thing. And possibly, and I think Jeremy believes this, that he was being driven to these hacks in a certain sense by the government. And there's something weird going on that we don't know about, and I think they just didn't want him to go there.